Have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right. My next item before the board is the furnishings and supplies for the Office of Conflict Counsel. I did wonder about ordering business cards for the two attorneys.
They gotta be here at least 2 weeks.
Yep.
Before.
Not printing anymore.
Good idea.
I don't have any problem,
Yeah.
you know,
Wait till you
printing
get here.
cards, but they gotta be committed to be here.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just get the sheet from Office Max and buy them 10 on their first day and say, if you make it through these.
Make them
we'll
cut
talk.
their own.
We'll talk. Excellent. That sounds fantastic.
All right.
IT was able to find a double-sided scanner for the office, but that was their only one that they had. But to get another one would be $300 if you're interested in it.
I think you can have a joint communal one that is okay. I don't think that violates any office issues to have a scanner that is
Okay.
centrally located.
Okay, that, given their setup there, that might be a little challenging, but I think they can.
I think they can make it
it
work.
work.
I
Okay,
think.
excellent. And then Christy did get me line items, but we were still looking at budget. And at this point, like, I don't know how much to leave in that contract line.
We're gonna have to keep working around it is what we're gonna have to.
The contract line, well, the set contracts,
Yes.
are we only gonna have the two? So I can take everything but that.
I believe so.
Okay, I will utilize that, and then I will try to set up the budget based on one attorney, and then I'll do a shot in the dark on when we're gonna hire the other one.
Yeah.
Maybe do out at least 6 weeks.
Try
Maybe
4.
try 2, okay. 4.
Because if you have
Well, if you're not
individuals that
interviewing-
are not able to interview for 2 weeks, and we would try and hire as fast as possible. So I would say
4 weeks?
4 weeks.
Four's a good
So
4 to
I'll
be
run-
safe.
So I'll run that because we really need to get that budget in there.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to do it too soon and then have to do shifting,
Yes.
especially where we're talking A and B budget.
Yes.
Right.
We don't like that.
So,
And Christine, where do we pay the others, like Stratton and Dan Taylor from?
the hourlies, they're in the, what used to be 1604. There's a line item for
Okay.
overflow.
A whole different.
That's the same
okay,
place we're
okay,
putting all of these.
Okay. I was just
Um,
nervous it was in that contract line, but if it's not in
It's
there,
not.
okay, perfect.
It's not, and
Okay.
it has its own budget. There was some money left in there, but I haven't ran a new AB.
Okay.
So-
Okay.
And that is all of my furnishing and office supplies for the Lander building.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
Judge.
My item 4 I have is
Thanks,
a
Dave.
recommendation. Sorry, what?
I said, thanks, Dave.
Sorry. Is a recommendation to award the photography bid project. We did get 2 bids on the project. Both of them were qualified. As Emma reviewed and looked at the cost versus their portfolio that they have, she would like to recommend to the board that we award the contract to Courtney Weeks Photography. And there's not a set dollar amount because it is on an hourly rate, but it is well under the 10 that was originally discussed. And then if agreed, she'll go ahead and start setting up. There's the 2 days that we want set for like headshots and things like that for the county. And there's quite a few different events coming up that will get her rolling on.
So my only question here is how come they didn't come before us, all the bids? Kind of like we have in the past, and just so that we do it on the public record instead of you guys looking at them off the side and then coming with a recommendation.
So the only ones that are less than $50,000 are the ones that we look and review.
Yeah, that goes over.
Not in front of the board.
Okay.
We can do that.
Well, I thought we had kind of started that procedure, and I like it on the public record.
I personally, on the smaller ones, I like it, but on the smaller ones like that, I'm okay with the departments doing it, make a recommendation, because we have so many, the possibility of being absolutely overwhelmed if every single bid that starts coming in for all of the services that are less than $50,000, we could have a ton of them. Because, I mean, you're talking a fertilizer bid, you're talking, I mean, anything like that that's, because that's now then in the, that's just a quote process then almost.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
mean, you can
especially
go
for
out to
this one.
RFP for them, I mean, and I get that, I would just put a bit, something in there, because otherwise we're gonna have a lot of,
I have mixed feelings about it because of
I mean,
just the perception
yeah.
of, we've had some concerns in other areas.
But those are on big dollar ones.
They
not
are.
Smaller dollar ones. Like, I can agree with Terrell, maybe there's a dollar limit that we bring it before the board, but 10,000 or under, and this was substantially under the bid that we had. I'm okay with that.
But I think Ernie's right, though, that we do need to have that, we need to have that in writing of what is coming, if there's something, because what I don't want to get in the habit of is just picking which ones we do coming back and forth to the board. But I don't want to have every single quote product, I mean, because,
Well, this is a little bit to me like the event center, when we do
Yeah.
contracts and stuff like that too up there. I mean, they may be under $10,000, but, or, you know, whatever. But it's, I don't know, it's just somewhere on the record.
Well,
But
that
there's,
we-
at some point in time, we have to be efficient.
Yeah.
I struggle with all
they-
the contracts from the event center coming down, and this is a minor contract. Let's gain some efficiencies and go.
well, and this is a recommendation to approve the contract. I mean, that's really what we're looking at. Even like the event center is, I mean, because there's a lot of shady areas in a lot of the areas of how, I mean, because if there's any adjustment to fees, the state law is very specific. The commission has to be the one signing it.
Right.
And Emma's making a recommendation here because she's reviewed it with procurement and others. This is the one they're recommending to us to sign. It's still being represented to us in an open meeting. It's not a received bid like we would do like a formal package for like the roof or anything like that. And that's where I say I think we need to make sure that that process is written out.
Yes.
And that's the process that we need to have detailed, because I don't have a problem with the contract coming here, because we're basically binding the county then, which that is under state law. That's our responsibility. But
I understand, I appreciate all that too. We need a procedure,
yes,
but we also had a person present to us that they had a lifetime riding pass. that, somebody had chosen them, and so that's what I'm guarding against, is I trust everybody, but
We're in
it's
a different place today than we were back then.
it's a whole lot easier to make it come before us and have it on the record, in my opinion.
Commissioners, I agree completely, and that's something that is in the policy as it comes before the board for review and approval, is those steps. What do we do if it's less than $30,000? What do we do at 30 to 50? What do we do at 50? And that consistency that Commissioner Tubby talked about, for me, is key. For my vendors, for my department heads, and for the board as well, to have a consistent process that we know every time. And it doesn't matter what department it is, and it doesn't matter who the vendor is. But this is the process every time you have a project that hits here, right? I think that is the critical piece. So this is how we have been treating things that are less than 50. If we want to do adjustments, right, we're more than happy to do the adjustments going forward.
Okay.
Sure. I do have letters prepared if we want to, or if you want to look and review, or let me.
to tell you the truth, I'm okay. If that's the recommendation of the group and that's the recommendation you're making, I'm fine with that. That's, you know.
I agree.
Now, if there was another zero behind that, we would be having a
Different story.
a much different story.
Do you want a motion, or you want to talk some more?
No,
Okay.
you know me, I can vote no whenever
I don't know if I want to do this one.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we award the photography contract to Courtney Weeks Photography as presented.
We have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. That's funny.
You're getting nervous up here, Ernie. Or Commissioner. Or Mr. Chairman.
It's all good.
Alrighty, my last item before the board today is a procurement review. I just wanted to touch base on 3. We'd been talking about the road and bridge hot road mix for a while. That has been awarded last week to Nicholson Construction, and they're moving forward with that project. The fireworks for the 4th of July celebration, that contract was signed last week. It's been fully executed by the other party as well, and is back to the Commissioner's office, and they are moving forward with that as well. And the Historical Museum roof, we did award that project to Robison Roofing. That contract was returned just shortly after I left that business meeting with the Commissioner, so it'll be ready and on for the next week's business session for your review and signature.
Cool. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you. All right. DEQ, huh?
How are you all?
We have the
We are good.
the new DEQ.
Yeah, newish.
I mean, you've been here for a while.
The kinder, gentler EQ?
All right, well, good morning. So as I did actually get the pleasure to meet you somewhat at the discussion about the wastewater pipeline that you guys are considering and looking into. But just to give you a little more of an introduction, so my name is Katie Burkholm, and I came to work for the DEQ as the regional administrator for Pocatello's office in August, replacing Bruce. And I am an Idaho girl. I grew up in Salmon, and I've been working in the phosphate patch for the last 15 years, and then came to work. I actually started my career with DEQ early on and did a fellowship with them for graduate school, and then went to private industry, and now I've come back. So kind of gone full circle, and really happy to be back in a public service role. And so anyhow, coming back to DEQ, I know Bruce used to meet with you folks about twice a year, every spring and fall, just as a check-in, and so I plan to continue doing that. So just to make sure that we've got our lines of communication open, but if you ever have an item that pops up that you would like to see our attention on, then by all means, please call me. And that was the meeting I came to later, or I guess it was late last year. Anyways, I've got my dates kind of mixed up, but anyhow, I was just going to let you all know what's kind of going on at the DEQ, and then be available to answer any questions you might have for me. And really what's happening at DEQ, a lot of the energy right now is around the ARPA funds that we've discussed a little bit already, but the DEQ has been authorized to manage $300 million for drinking water and wastewater projects throughout the state. Those are going to be managed and issued, those dollars will be issued using our existing state revolving fund processes. So not reinventing the wheel, but using the same processes that people had applied for grants and loans with us previously. So what's happened is we did receive a large amount of requests for those dollars. Those are being, all the applications are being ranked and looked at now. There's a lot of different components that our state office uses to rank those projects. That's done over in Boise. And for the ARPA dollars, I believe the process is that they'll have a draft ranking, a draft list basically that will go through a legislative review, and then those will be available, I believe, for public comment, and then it'll be finalized. And so there is a process that that will go through to before that is issued. So we did receive a large amount of requests. We received $1.5 billion of requests for those $300 million that we had to manage. About $500 million of that, or $500 million, was actually requested by the city by Ada County. And so even when you take that off and you're looking more at smaller and underserved communities, you're still looking at $1 billion worth of requests. Of those, about 40% of them did include shovel-ready projects, which so people were already ready to go. And so we do anticipate that, I mean, that was definitely a need in our state, that hopefully these dollars will help fund some of those projects that have been ready to go for a long time. So on top of that, we have our regular state revolving fund of drinking water and wastewater grants and loans. And then on the ARPA dollars, the other thing that the DEQ is managing with ARPA dollars is we also have been given $70 million over a 5-year period of time to manage for groundwater contamination projects. And so we have been looking at that as well. And again, it's got a similar ranking process where we try to serve underserved communities and all of that first. And so that's going on. Of that $70 million, a big portion is actually going to the cleanup on the Coeur d'Alene Lake So that's going on in the state, and they're receiving an influx of money, of course, with the metals contamination in that lake and it being such a valuable resource for the state. That's been a big focus from the governor's office. Let's see, so in your county, I just wanted to let you know where everybody was at on the drinking water and wastewater side. And in your county for planning grants, which are more like grants to sort of get plans and specs and things like that in line, the city of Lava and the city of Inkom have requested planning grants. We did meet with the city of Inkom after our discussions here to just kind of help see what we could do as far as they wanted to look at any flexibilities and things like that with that planning grant. So we have been talking with them. And on wastewater grant and loan, the city of McCammon and the city of Chubbuck have also requested funds. Again, I don't know where the awards are going to be on that yet. And then on drinking water planning grants, the city of Lava and the city of Chubbuck have requested planning grants for drinking water systems. And then the city of McCammon and the city of Chubbuck have requested more infrastructure dollars to help with their drinking water systems. So those are all going through the DEQ system right now, and hopefully we'll be able to fund. I'm not sure where that's all going to land, but
On that income planning grant, are we able to expand that like we talked about?
yeah, I believe so, because they actually, I don't even believe there's any changes to the planning grant that they need to make. They
Okay.
actually wrote that with a significant amount of flexibility.
Okay.
So they have, should they get funded, which I believe that they look pretty promising.
What's the timetable on that?
I think that they're issued later in the year.
Like
I'll have to get back.
September-ish?
I'll have to get back with you on that. I'm
Okay.
still learning that whole process. So, but I'll let you know.
I just had somebody reach out to me today. It was kind of coincidental that you were here today, because they reached out to me about that, so,
About the income grant?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we went and met with the mayor and just sort of talked through everything he has going on. And so he's aware that I think that flexibility will be there. But
Okay.
I'll send you an email letting you
Okay,
know
thank you.
the timing. Okay. So that's what's kind of going on statewide. Of course, it takes a lot of energy to spend that much money and to help communities spend that much money. So a lot of energy in our agency as a whole is spent on that this year. And then in our office in particular, in Pocatello, of course, I've been coming up to speed. Our engineering manager has been with us for over a year now. He's just doing great. I'd really like to meet with you all and bring him along and have him meet with you. His name's Alan Johnson, and his focus and a lot of our focus has been exactly where I believe your energies have been focused as well, as far as the development out in your county and kind of grabbing that tiger by the tail and dealing with the pressure. Of course, after the COVID situation, you guys have all seen and you've experienced the situation where there's just a lot of people coming into our state and there's a lot of housing pressures, and we're seeing that throughout our region. And in order, of course, we've talked about the infrastructure, where the populations reside and wastewater and drinking water, but when you're expanding out into your counties, of course, that becomes an area of concern, because as, those septic, by approving large subdevelopments with all septic systems, those do not treat your groundwater, and when you have a higher density, then it can actually cause some groundwater contamination long term. So we've been focused on developing some best management practices that would help folks such as yourselves, just ideas that can be in your toolbox, so that when you are looking at different subdivision plans and specs, like what solutions could you look at, so that there's a lot of creative things going out there in the world, and we're trying to focus on narrowing that down for our region. They're not all appropriate for our area, just climate and geography or whatever, but so we're really focused on developing that. Alan is working on his certified public manager training, and he's going to do that, is the focus of his project, and really as a resource to develop for folks such as yourselves and your planning and zoning committees and things like that. So In the meantime, of course, that will take some time to pull together, and in the meantime, we always want to be available to help review those plans and specs and review things that your developers are coming forward with, and just see if there's some good suggestions that we can provide and recommendations. And so that's been a big focus of ours. And I think in looking long-term, I know you're all looking at a long-term project of a wastewater pipe potentially from Income all the way into the city of Pocatello. And I thought that was a really great meeting that you guys facilitated. And I think in looking into that future and how to make that successful in the long term, there are things that can be put into subdivisions now that would make it, so, you know, it'd be great to see subdivisions that had some kind of infrastructure set in already, maybe a community wastewater system where when the pipeline got there, there was a really simple connection, because nobody wants to dig up a community's yards and roads and driveways and things like that to try to get them connected to a central sewer system after the fact. So there's ideas like that that I think could be implemented in the meantime. Of course, everything is site-specific, and you know, it's never black and white, so we totally recognize that. But that's kind of our focus, is just trying to help folks deal with the housing pressure that's coming into our region. So other than that, I'm available for whatever questions you might have of me.
So what about our landfill? What's the relationship there? How's things going?
Okay, well, I did actually get to go to one of the quarterly meetings. I think you guys have a fantastic consultant who's doing a great job, and I have been less involved just because things seem to be going well. I think they're working on a good plan to deal with the contamination at that landfill. So I think you're headed in the right direction. It's too bad that is a problem to deal with. And I mean, I kind of connect it to this whole septic tank situation. We don't want you having to deal with something like that in 20 or 30 years, you know, that is just the legacy of the past. And so, but yes, I think from what I've experienced at your landfill, you've got a good group of folks making positive changes to tackle that problem.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other questions? Comments?
She answered mine today, so I'm good. Thank you for
So
the
just
update.
just kind of one thing, and you touched on it on subdivisions and stuff like that. The big problem that we have is we have to come to a how can we help you. The other thing is, and there have been predecessors and other pushes, the county does not deal with water. We are not in the water business. We have been informed quite heavily by attorney generals and other people that's not our purview. Our purview is subdivisions.
Right.
And while we have state laws and rules that we deal with, one thing that does kind of bother me sometimes is everybody wants to say on our subdivisions, but I was trying to pull it up and my computer's, I can't find it, but I think it's downstairs on my on a thumb drive. I have pretty much every DEQ letter that's sent on a subdivision, and it's pretty much a cut, copy, and paste. They're form letters. And so what bothers me is we're asked to continue to include, and DEQ wants to say on this, but there's no actual input that's being put there, and I think a lot of times they don't even review of what actually is being said. It's the same comments. And so I think that's something is I've been working with Hal and our planning and zoning. We will be redoing the 5-acre rules and all that other stuff. We are going to change. There's going to be some changes that will come to try and help incentivize people to put and build in a smart way to reduce sprawl, to increase some of those things that you're doing, but it's going to have to be a discussion. And this is where DEQ needs to have the attitude of, if you want people to work with you, we need to work with them. And it has to be not just a cut, copy, paste form letter, and then we're going to throw a big fit because they're not doing a level 2 nitrate study and 14 other things, because that's when people shut off and they don't want to listen.
Right, and I totally hear you. And I'd love to sit down and meet with you one-on-one with Alan as well and start getting your feedback on these letters.
Hal's nodding his head back there, and
Okay.
we're going to have a conversation, and we've already been having some working, And we need to sit down and have a conversation.
We do,
about that.
and we have been reworking that letter. Part of the problem is that we get a very, very short period of time to look at those subdivision proposals. So a little bit of additional time would help. But we've been talking about this exact same thing. So I'm completely on the same page with you, that we've got to figure out a way, and there are so many touch points, like we're not in the subdivision business, that's you guys, in the land management business, we do water quality, water quantities handed in our sister agency, the IDWR, so, and then you have the septic tank permits with the health
And
district.
we have a
so you have
timeline
all
ourselves
these-
that we have to follow by state statute, otherwise people just get to do what they want.
I'm completely with you. When you say we should figure out the kinks so that we work well together to help smart development, I'm completely on board. So I would love to meet with you folks. I know that you're very, very busy, so I will just send you an email and I'll
We'll
call
get it
and
scheduled
try to
out,
get
and we'll get
something
it-
scheduled, because we would definitely like to find a more efficient way to get through that type timeline and do it effectively. So, we look at those letters, you all are our customer for that. And so Alan completely is like, we were just having this conversation even this week, like what more could we add? He's been talking with Bannock or Bingham County as well. And just like what value can we bring into those that's useful for you? So,
Well, and that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing, because right now, development's gonna happen.
yep.
So there are certain things that we can do to encourage it, and the biggest thing is we have to have how do we help development work?
And be
And-
smart.
And not just we're just gonna study and stop everything, because that just makes people not listen.
But at the same time, we want it to be smart.
Yep.
We don't want one neighbor's well pulling the effluent from the upgradient
Yep.
neighbor's septic system. So we absolutely want to be sure people are consuming clean water for
Yep.
sure. So,
Very much so.
all right. Well, very good.
Yep.
All right, I've got 2 actions to follow up on, so.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank
Good
you.
for me.
Good.
All
Hey,
right.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Adam?
Adam McKinney, Chief Technical Officer. This morning I wanted to discuss something that we started a few months ago, and when we started it, we had asked for some funding possibly to come from the rural broadband, or the broadband infrastructure upgrade allotment in the ARPA funds, but at the time we were just directed, go ahead and do it. We've got it done. So you've got the direct communications bill. Basically, it's got 2 pieces on there. The $1,063.89, that's something I've already got budgeted for. That's the maintenance cost for that connection. The other is the construction cost, and that was what we brought before you. I believe it was in January, and we discussed it. That was to actually plumb the line, drill underneath the street and take it over there. So I'm just back before you to discuss how we go ahead and pay for that. If it needs to come out of our budget and we just pay for it, or if it's something we can use from however we need to just get it paid for. Well, that's why I'm
He's not a money guy, he just says we need to.
That's right, that's right. It was agreed by the board that we could fund this in some way at the time. I just don't know if it had been decided at the time. The maintenance, on the other hand, I do have the budget for that. So.
County operations or ARPA?
I put county operations right now.
Operations.
Okay.
We need to have that line plumbed, that's all there's to it.
If you'll get me, well, I have it. Is that a non-scribbled on? Because I just scribbled all over.
I just wrote on mine. I can get you the
Okay.
original.
Well, I've got the original. I can give
Okay.
it to Christie, and
Okay.
then I'll just give him the line.
And I'll pay this maintenance portion of it on an original
Okay.
copy as well.
So why don't you give me
A copy with my line item.
after
then.
yours?
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
And then that
I will
way the
deliver it
difference
to
will
your
be paid by
office
the
today.
board.
Okay, and just to give you an update on the wireless link that was connected between the courthouse and the Sterling Building, we are going to redeploy that between Road and Bridge and the landfill to upgrade their current 11 megabit unlicensed link. We're going to replace that with the 5 gigahertz licensed link, which should give the landfill a considerably more robust connection. We're going to leave that 11 megabit connection in place as a backup. It's end of life. We can't get new equipment, so if that thing goes down, we're kind of stuck. So our plan is to just augment that current connection. That'll save us having to run fiber up there to the landfill in the long run. So just an update on that. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. I just sent you something, read through it, figure out what's
All right.
going on. They said it's a legal holdup.
Mike, let's go ahead. I'm gonna put you last. You're gonna be here anyway.
I'll be here anyway.
Yeah.
Commissioner W, before we start, did you get a number from Mia?
I have it.
Meet you after?
Yes, I'll get it to you as we walk out of here. I was gonna send it to you last night, but it was like midnight when I remembered that I had it sitting there.
No worries.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Jaglowski, Bannock County Engineer. I think last time we talked regarding the open space and subdivision and how many and how much and when were some of the questions that I left with. We had a chance to compile those for you. I do have some thoughts and some ideas should you desire them. But what I was really kind of looking at is just taking a couple minutes and explain some of the different processes that we have. And I had is that okay, just take a couple minutes to kind of give you some background on that?
Be timely.
Okay, very good. We have two types of subdivisions, or two types of ways of subdividing land. We have the minor or minor land division, which is given to us by the state. It says that we can divide property into 4 different parcels should they have a land right to be able to, or a development right to be able to do that. The second process is a subdivision or a platting process. And in our ordinance, we have 4 different steps for a subdivision process. Some of which entail very little commitment, some of it, and then the balance of it entails a lot of commitment. The first step is pre-development, and that's where that has the least amount of commitment. In the spirit of that is a meeting between staff, letters from agencies, and the developer and landowner coming to a meeting and saying, the developer basically saying, this is what we would like, and we provide information and give them opportunity for us to download what the ordinance, how the ordinance directs them to develop that land. And so then they take that, there's a comment letter that comes back from us to them, and they use that to either decide if they want to continue the process or to wait in that process. The majority of the people, they continue the process, and that goes to a concept plan review, which that is the next level of effort that the developer puts into this. At that time, the developer would typically hire a surveyor, maybe an engineer or planner. They would put everything out on as a sketch plan or as a concept plan. And they again, or we again at that time, engaged the agencies to make comment. From that, we take that information, we write a staff report, and we present that in front of the Planning and Development Commission in a public hearing format. What comes from there is either an approval, deny, or an approval with conditions, or tabling. We've had that happen once. And so typically there is an approval with conditions. And so those conditions are moved forward. And the next step is preliminary plat. And should there be an approval, then their next step is preliminary plat. They again put more effort into the drawings. They have more research. They conduct different studies that need to happen from there. They include all the items that are in the recommendations of approval, and from that they submit an application. They pay fees. I should say they pay fees at the concept. They pay fees at the preliminary plat, and it goes before the Bannock County Planning and Development Council, or not council, council as a business item, and that is heard. And I find that the spirit of that meeting, outside of a public hearing, is to assure that they are meeting everything that they've talked about within the concept phase, and then also to assure that all the items that the ordinance is asking them to meet is complete. Once that is done, there is an approval with conditions, denial, tabling. And if it's approved with conditions, then that moves towards the final plat. Once the preliminary plat is done is where a lot of expenses, I mean the majority of the expense, the soft expense or the paper expense is construction plans are developed. Typically and usually land is secured, and if it isn't already secured already, money is mobilized to have joint trench, and there's quite a bit of effort that goes into that. And then once they're completed with their construction plans, we review and approve, and then they go out to start constructing on that. And so that's another whole different permit, situation, is that we have our construction and stormwater and utilities and everything under that. But once that gets started, then typically there is a final plat. The final plat's, according to our ordinance, is held within the, it's an administrative application. That application includes reviews by staff, reviews against all the other recommendations and everything else that they have. And then our county surveyor reviews that, as well as our assessor would review that. Once everything comes back, we say this is okay, and we start scheduling meetings with the commissioners once Mylars are made and signatures are put together. And that's when you, as the Bannock County Commissioners, get to see it at that time on that.
Okay. And I'm going to rein you in a little bit. What's on the agenda is reporting the requested information pertaining to the status of the current subdivision applications. So
Right, and
that's what we have to hold to. I mean,
The reason why
we're broad right here from where we need to be bringing that in.
Okay, very good. I appreciate you letting me visit with you, because I just wanted to make sure that you knew what concept, how many different plans are in concept, and what the status is on that. So I'll go ahead and move forward. Currently, right now, we have 71 actions within the subdivision portion of this. We have one application in pre-development. In fact, we had our last meeting and we submitted an approval letter, or not approval letter, a comment letter, and that's with Kurt Grover. Kurt Grover is, and that's in the pre-development. What we have in the queue right now for concept plan, we have 4 different actions, 4 different applications in the concept plan, 2 of which was heard in April 20th. One is going to be seen by you with an appeal. The other one is has been approved, but it is approved with conditions, and the conditions are based on the open space. I think we've talked about that before a little bit. The 2 other pieces that we have, one concept plan, which is the Grover concept plan, that is going to be heard next Wednesday on that. We've met with them, we've talked to them about the wording in the subdivision, and they are modifying their concept plan to include the 1 lot or a lot for open space. So I see that as a non-consequence. The other item that is in concept plan is one that is south of town. We have a meeting with them today to talk the same and see if they're able, not see, but let them know that the direction or the interpretation has changed. It's changed to what the wording says, and we'll have an outcome of that sometime around 2, 3 o'clock. Well, the meeting's at 2, so I'm thinking 3 o'clock or so. We're expecting that one to be on the agenda for June 15th on that. So what we have is we have 2 that have already been heard. One is being appealed. The other one is waiting for how the whole open space thing, comes out, if there's, how that works. And then I'm sure he's going to apply for a preliminary plat on that. So that was an action that was approved. Preliminary plat, we have one that's in preliminary plat right now. It is the development that's over on the south side of Smith Canyon Road, on the other side of what is that, Lava Ranches. On there. They are proposing open space. We're waiting for some more information from the developer. Right now, looking at the plat that they have, open spaces contained on a minor standpoint within the lots, but the majority of the open space is left in 40-acre blocks. And they have 2 other open space areas that are, one would be used as a retention not retention, but a detention basin.
So those open space areas meet one of the three prims, A, B, and C?
Yes, they're getting close. This one's kind of a mix.
Okay. Well, they can't be a mix. They have to be a B, or C.
That's
Okay.
correct. I'm telling you what's current.
Okay.
So it's out there,
Yeah.
is not following the rules.
Yeah, it's out there not following the rules, but I think there can be some minor changes and things can work.
Okay. How many of those do we have that are, out of all the actions, the 71 actions, how many actions would fall under the rules or are not a specific A, B, or C? That would be the big key.
So the next piece I wanted to report to you is something that is more dramatic, and that's the projects that are within, the projects that are within construction and the projects. There's 9 developments currently under construction right now, and 8 of those 9 have filed final plat. So they're going through some type of review within the final plat on that. Some of them have filed the final plat last year, like we have Coyote Hollow 3, Coyote Hollow 4, and they bonded for improvements so that they're able to get closer to, and then they're also in the construction phase of that. And so we have nine currently in construction, and we have 8 that are in final plat on that. And those generally do not meet the requirements. Yeah, we have 8 of them. I just wanted to check on that. Those generally do not meet the requirements of the prims A, B, or C.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, my suggestion would be is those 8 we need to focus our efforts on and see if there's a way to resolve them inside of prims A, B, and C. Does that make sense?
So let me make sure I understand. We want to
Mitigate, and they need to be able to fall under A, B, or C would be
the final plats.
the final plats, and see if
Okay.
there's a way to mitigate that to where we can work through that and work with legal, and I'll get with you offline and maybe talk some more about that specifically.
So the proposal is go back,
We're gonna have to go back.
all that are currently being worked on, and bring them under A, B, or C.
Everything needs to fall under an A, B, or C as currently written, or unless Prim D is approved here fairly quickly that would allow such things. But until a Prim D or something else gets put in, they must meet A, B, or C to be signed off for a final plat. And so we're going to have to adjust, and we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to work. I think there's some ways that we could probably do that.
Great.
The other one, and this is something that just as I'm talking about it because it's here, so I'll talk about it now. As I went back and I reviewed our process and I reviewed some other stuff, the main failure point here is the lack of or the exclusion of the Board of Commissioners until final plat. So the problem is you have a part-time board that tries their best, that runs everything until we're here at final plat to sign off a piece of vellum, and everything is built, hard costs, construction costs, everything. So we've allowed county decisions all the way up to that point without oversight of the board. The business item, that once the preliminary is approved, and before any construction or any application or anything to final approval of that plan, when it goes into construction, that's the point where the Board of County Commissioners needs to approve that. If you look at most cities, most organizations, no shovels or dirt or anything gets turned. Hard costs don't get put until the people that are going to be responsible if something goes bad or actually wants to make the decision. And then at that point, they can go build, they can do whatever they want to do, and then when they need the vellum signed, that's an easy 2-second meeting because we've already approved it. The question is did it meet the approval of what we did? That's the failure point.
So,
Because right now,
what's the point of having the planning and zoning board then, if we're questioning their decisions?
well, so we approve their decisions, everything. We approve everything, but we don't approve it until the very final point. The problem is that they are an extension of us. Your planning and zoning board is actually there to make it to where the commissioners are not dealing with every single item that goes before the board because we don't have enough time.
Right.
I mean, that's just simply how it goes. The problem is it's been delegated down so far that everything gets done, and basically you had a board of county commissioners that, unless there was a vellum that needed to be signed, they didn't have anything to do with it. So it's like Gilbert Ranch subdivision. How many times have you been asked about it and you didn't even know what was going on? And this is the problem is we're outside of the loop. You look at most municipalities, and before the shovels start turning, that's where the final approving board gives the go or no go. Did we meet the standard or not? And so that's the failure point that's occurred here, is the board that has followed A, B, and C and modified and done whatever, they approved it once, and then they came back with the business decision, and they approved it again, and then they came back and now it's getting down to us, and now that we've had legal review and some questions answered, that's so far down the line, you can't mitigate, change, or input. And really, that should be prior to construction, and hard liability costs then can be gone after. Because how much of your construction costs, if you're gonna build a Gilbert Ranch subdivision, are before you start turning dirt? A couple $100,000 at the most?
Well, it depends if you are securing land.
If
you're securing land, then that's something else.
Yeah, but remove the land cost. The actual hard work cost of an engineer going in and doing stuff, you're maybe $100,000.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's where you're at for liability purposes if there's everything that went sideways. The problem is now, how much are they gonna put into that subdivision and building all of that? And there's questions then of action. That point, we still are the approval board, and we're doing that at the vellum point, which that's basically said, hey, the game's already over. You know, we're just signing off and making sure it was played, when we should have been watching the game from the get-go.
So my question is, and I don't disagree with where you're at, I think that makes sense, but if it's worked so well up until now.
Well, it didn't.
Well, seemed to have, and now all of a sudden we have a discrepancy in opinion on applying open space rules, which has caused this problem.
Yeah.
So,
There's other problems in the subdivision ordinance, but that is your that's your failure point. And the problem is this is just one of the points that's come to light of it. There are other things that have happened in the past that have been worked out. The culverts under the road and some of the other stuff of people doing stuff before the board. And really, if you're going to have to go before the Board of County Commissioners and you started work on a construction area, it's a lot easier for us to have a conversation with you than a part-time volunteer board that doesn't really care if they're, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's just where you're at.
But there's still gotta be the appeal process in there.
And there is an appeal
somehow.
process. You can still
So
have an
they
appeal.
have that opportunity.
Yeah, you can,
I agree with you. I think that our input should be earlier,
yeah,
before hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent. But I think that's a process that you go ahead and we develop. you know.
but the whole thing is, it comes back to, is you still have an appeal process. It's just like a vacation or anything like that. At this business point, everything's already been approved by the board. You have a right at that point to appeal to the Board of County Commissioners and say this is right. And if they don't waive that, then it moves forward. The process continues. When everything's done, instead of taking it to the board, the Planning and Zoning Board, it comes to before the Board of Commissioners. You can still ask for a reconsideration, just like in other aspects of our code. That's perfectly okay, and we can go back and we can review it again.
so my question on that, and actually, Brian, did you have something before I asked my question?
Now, a lot of this is governed under the state statute once we adopt an ordinance to have a planning and zoning board. But we can talk about that after. I think I could answer some of the questions you guys have on that process and where it worked out.
So, and there's no doubt that we need to work on the processes. I mean, they haven't been perfect. But for right now,
We gotta fix these lines.
let's talk about where we're at with this open space and where our current applications are and how we fix that.
Well, to fix it, nothing goes forward if it can't fit into A, B, or C. Unless there is additional prim that gets, if there's something that you guys can come up with that you want to write, put together, and have for our review, and we can go ahead and approve it, it can't go forward if it doesn't fit A, B, or C. And then the 9 that are in construction phase, we need to figure out how to mitigate that. And that's where there's going to have to be a conversation and figure out, because right now, the final plats cannot be approved unless they meet A, B, or C. And so that's the problem, is you've got some subdivisions with lots and lots and lots of money that's going to sit there, and nothing's going to move forward unless they can meet A, B, or C. Because then the problem is anybody who wants to challenge it, go, and we're going to end up in court, and we'll lose.
Okay.
So we've got to figure A, B, or C. That's
But I mean, that's what the statute is. We can't combine them. That's true.
We can't add D fast enough?
We could, if we can write D as fast as we can write D and go through the proper process and channels, but we need to get into writing D then if that's what we need to do. And that's what I'm saying. We need to either figure out how to mitigate, add another prim, modify a prim, do some
Well,
stuff.
I think there needs to be some conversation and mitigation or talks, because I have a very tough time of, well, we're gonna create D because we made mistakes, and, you know what I'm saying? That means that everything that somebody doesn't like, we'll just make another D or a E.
Now, but I'm not opposed that if A, B, and C are too rigid or have caused too many problems, and that's why we need a D, that's actually why you make additional rules, is if we actually are looking at it and, hey, the reason that this started happening is because these rules actually were not, there was something about it, and in the process that it caused problems. You can't just, like you said, you can't just go make another D because we want to make another D.
Yeah.
There has to be, and again, how we do it, if this is what we're saying, but you have to have it written in the rules. So if we're going to make, if A, B, and C are too rigid, or there are problems and their interpretation, because A, B, and C are actually pretty black and white prims. There's no gray that is actually given in those areas. And so that's the problem I have too with those. I've never liked how it was written because they are so rigid. They cause problems. And so there should be some rewrite in there. There's been some talk about rewrite, but we got to do something
And
about it.
I'm 100% with that, but I'm very much against all of a sudden this gentleman
Yep.
against Mr. McNabb
Yep.
come up with, these are the deals in the statute, these are what they say, you guys are not following them, and to contradict him, we just turn around and say, oh, well, we'll make D then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
We can't do that.
Nope. But
My concern is that we don't slow down the subdivisions and the developers and that process, because we just can't do that.
can't do that.
We've come too far to take
And
that
that's
step
why
back.
I'm saying is, I think there's some ways and some mitigation for these 9 that could probably, if we take a look at them, and that they could probably, there's probably some ways that they could fit in their A, B, or C. There might not be. But I think we do need to take it looking at maybe the readjustment of A, B, C, or adding a D, and actually look at it, because we do have a housing crunch. We do have a problem. We do have some things there. And A, B, and C, to tell you the truth, are very anti-growth, and I don't believe in them. I don't believe in the 5-acre minimums in some of these things. It's actually creating sprawl and creating environmental hazard, because we are forcing builders into areas that we shouldn't be doing that in.
So from a procedural standpoint, how long would it take us to rewrite A, B, and C, or just to add a D? Procedurally.
Do you want me to comment on that? We have a D, and it really doesn't pertain. So really, the D is an E. Sorry about that. Maybe I should have, we have a D portion in there, and it says something about like minor land divisions. Yeah, minor land divisions have to do this same thing. So if we were to add something, I think I would want, if I was writing it, I would want to have a clear idea of what we would need to have in there, and I'm sure we can put something together and ready for, that concept or idea in several hours, really. I don't want to make huge promises, but if there is,
Well, it's
And I
tough.
there is a
disagree
D.
somewhat, because we're talking about open space and you just got 700 comments. Or, we just did a survey. So to me, you can't just, because of this situation, you gotta look at that survey and have justification with that too.
Yep.
So to me, it's not a couple hour deal.
Well, and I was just asking from an overall process, are we talking to
Well,
rewrite the ordinance? Is it-
You're probably
is it
going
a
to take
month, 2 months?
You're probably going to take 30 to 60 days, because you have to have publish it. There has to be things that are there, and that's what I say. Depending upon where
We're not
those,
gonna slow down the subdivision 30 to 60
well,
days.
depending upon where those are at, some of them are going to take construction times for another 60 to 90 days. And so if we move and you have some of that stuff, you may or may not have. They might not even notice, depending, to tell you the truth, depending upon where it's at. But again, it comes back to Hal and myself have been having some conversations about some other things and things that way. And like I said, what we really need to understand is where those 9 are, the 8 that are in construction specifically.
They're being built.
They're being built. What kind of problems are they facing? What is those 8 going to have to deal with? And those are the things that we need to understand. And like I said,
So we need to review the 8.
we need to review the 8.
And then, before we even go to them, come talk to us.
Yeah.
Is what I.
Yep.
But my only concern is the 2 that we started out with, the Mr. Ward and the Mr. McNabb, on that. We went one way and the other way.
Well,
And for us to change, I mean, it'd have to be an appeal process to change that. But if there was justification in following the rules,
well, and that's the
it's
whole thing
pretty tough
is,
for me to come around and say, well, we decided this time it's our mistake.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
did both of those get appealed?
No,
Only one of them.
only one.
And so that's the problem, is we have a board now that just created the problem, and that's what I'm talking about, of where the commissioners are in the process.
I disagree. The board didn't create the problem. We didn't follow the
Well,
ordinance.
no, but the board.
So that's what
but
created the problem.
But again, the board can read A, B, and C themselves. And that's the problem too, is you can have guidance, you can have opinions. You can have opinions from engineers, you can have opinions from lawyers, you can have opinions from planning and zoning. It's still the board's decision to, and interpretation, they follow A, B, and C. And the board said yes on one and no on the other. Well, so now we've created the problem, because now the review process, because there is no appeal on one of them, it will not come back to us until we're ready to sign a piece of vellum.
I'm going to defend the board on that a little bit, because as we sit here, we ask our experts.
Yes,
give
and I
us- give us-
completely agree with
give
you
us
on where you're
advice.
going.
So
Yep.
I would say the board got bad advice on
Well-
one or the other case.
And again, and that's what I'm saying though, that's why that concept phase, before anything really gets going, where we start building and opening liabilities to the county, that's where I would say we.
But if we insert ourselves in the process up there, what does that do to the appeals process?
Nothing, because you're at the construction phase. They've approved everything, everything's ready to go, and what we're saying is, I want to say about your approval of your subdivision, then instead of you building a whole bunch of money.
But that's a secondary conversation to
Sure.
where we're at right now, on what do we need to do right now with these
Yeah.
people that are wanting to build.
That's what I'm saying,
And
is-
the decisions that we've made that have affected that.
I'm not worried about the ones that want to build, because I can deal with them,
Well,
in an
that are in the
appeal.
middle of it.
Yeah, and we can't talk about, you know, and that's the other thing, is we do have an appeal, so we need to be careful what we're talking about.
The
that.
future is set right
Yeah.
now. I mean, there's,
Well, the 8 are.
I hope everybody's clear on that. A, B, C, D,
That's it.
you say, that's where we're at right now.
Yep.
It doesn't go anywhere.
So we need a report on the status of the aid and what mitigation options are.
Yep,
Return and report
yep. That's where we're at on those 8. We gotta know.
within a week.
Yes, as fast as possible.
Okay, nothing's gonna fall in your lap.
Let us know.
Christie, will you put an agenda item on for next week for this discussion?
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I think it's pretty clear.
Okay. All right. Ryan, you're up.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Well, and I got a meeting at 11. I know you guys
So do
want
I.
to keep this brief, so I just had met with you guys about a month ago, and this is kind of my monthly HR plan.
Do you need a second?
I'm just gonna step out with Hal for just a
Sure.
second. Go ahead.
And I handed out something that has quite a few mistakes on it, which I caught, so I'm gonna ask you to toss that one and use this one instead, so you can pass that around.
So these are
As-
discard.
Yeah, there's one for you. So,
Do I get one of these?
yeah. And this is this is just kind of one area of, last time I talked to you about salary plan, there was a book that I handed out, and I just wanted to focus on recommendations on this. But before I get to the compensation piece, as this is an HR update, just let you all know a few of the areas we're working on, and in this setting. So, the HR office, I think, we're doing pretty good. I think Josh is taking, processing tons of documentation, processing lots of claims, and we keep him happy. And he's been saving my bacon, and he's a good qualified HR professional. He's a great sounding board for me. And one of the things that I've been working on a lot lately is, as we deal with incoming reports or complaints of policy violations, right? And our method for handling those is, first we try to help the supervisors with close coaching, right, and informal resolution, and we get a lot of that I don't think, we just kind of keep that day to day, right? And but it is happening, and I want you guys to know that we do a lot of informal coaching and helping the supervisors do the same. And then when it rises up to the point where we're doing the more formal things like the disciplinary letters and the terminations and demotions, that's where we work with iCrimp, and we provide templates for supervisors, and we're really involved in that process too. And it seems like there's a lot of work in that area, but it does ebb and flow a bit. So that's part of what we're working on. The other part is kind of with the risk management and the accidents, and I've really handed a lot of the processing of that to Josh. And so I don't have all the details like right in the top of my brain on this, but as far as a report to you, most of the accidents, like I kind of in my head have them in two categories. One is accidents that involve like workers' comp or hurt people, and the ones that don't. And so the ones that don't are mostly from the sheriff's office and this, or grounds, and it's just fender benders and minor things that we've been seeing.
There was a claim from the event center on a tractor that we just paid $2,500.
Yeah. So $2,500 are kind of
That's our,
ballpark of kind of where we're getting a lot of the claims. So
that's our deductible, isn't it?
that's our deductible.
So
Yep. And usually that's about where the accidents cost, around that. Sometimes it's broken glass or bumpers or fenders. And I think the one that the event center was
the hood on a tractor.
hood on a tractor, small thing. So,
Not even small things to me.
okay.
That's accountability.
It is. So, I guess I was, yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. So we're seeing some of those accidents. The ones that have been bodily injuries, like we had someone fall down the stairs the other day, but she didn't end up going to the doctor or anything, but she did report it. We've had, over at the sheriff's, like people will run to respond to something and hurt their knee or their ankle. We've had some of those. So as far as this month, that's mostly what we're getting. Another area we deal with is family medical leave and the disability accommodations. And since we put the policy for the disability ADA, we have been utilizing it about a couple times a month, where we have the interactive discussion, where we have the employee get the forms with their medical provider, work with the supervisor, and we discuss reasonable accommodations. And recently we've had this come into play where for years people have been getting like an hour off to go to either therapy or their child's therapy or something like that. And we didn't go through the ADA process like we were supposed to on such things. And so we're trying to correct some of that and just follow those right steps. And so we got that going on. As far as training goes, we have, as you've seen, implemented a big push for online training through the iCrimp, and we've got about 70% So we've still got some more. I think once we get a few departments that have really not done it, that'll get closer. So we're,
Like I said, connect it to COLA.
we'll talk about
You
that.
don't train, you don't get paid.
That could be a pretty good carrot. But,
It should be a real good carrot.
I did mine on water mitigation, okay? So-
I know. Supervisors did have a few to get that discount that, yeah, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And the winter hazard one, so. But, so that's going
So
really,
what kind of a discount is that?
it's like a 1% on our, isn't it, on our
Used to
liability?
be like, I thought it
What-
was more like 20% or 18%.
There, okay, so there's like lots of little things, right? So we've got the IT 1% and the HR 1% and the,
I've not been involved
yeah.
with this program, but I know traditionally it was like 18 to 20%. But I've not seen any.
And they break that up into
in
lots of
Bannock.
pieces. Yeah. So, but what's our liability insurance is about $500,000, or what, 450,000, somewhere. So it's a chunk, right?
540,000.
Yeah.
So if you can get a discount off that, and I think traditionally that it's, the amount we budgeted has had that discount.
So it's
Yeah.
a lot of money.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah. So we're working on that, and then what Josh and I are preparing is, well, this month I partnered with iCrimp and City of Pocatello and City of Chubbuck, and we did some supervisor trainings out at the City of Chubbuck and on coaching and some other things. And I presented one of the sessions, and the HR director from Pocatello, and so we had a pretty good turnout from the county at those trainings. I think we had close to 20 supervisors.
Really?
Good.
That's good.
Well, maybe that's high, maybe like 15, but we had a good turnout there. So, and what I'd like to do is beginning next month is to implement a supervisor 101. So when we hire a new supervisor, and I'm coordinating with your office on some of the payroll and accounting pieces of it, but give them some basic training on how policies and processes that supervisors need to know.
Very much so.
So we're hoping next month that starts. So, then recruitment, we've got about 18, I think, right now. Recruitment's going. Some of the oldest ones go back to November. You know, the D6 treatment counselors. We have the sheriff deputy one's been, years. We've got some in patrol. I mean, not patrol.
Dispatch?
Probation.
Oh.
Some of the probation coordinators. Yeah. So, and then ongoing with juvenile. So, but we have made some strides though as we've gone. Everybody on the online system. One of the barriers we've had was a lot of people would see our jobs on Indeed, which is people looking for jobs are using Indeed, Monster, these online job searches. And when Indeed's the biggest. And when they'd go to Indeed, Indeed provided their own application. And so people would apply using this Indeed application, and then we'd have to follow up and say, actually, that's not the right application. You need to do ours. And that was a big barrier that we've been working with Indeed, and I think there might be one or two old ones, but I think we got that problem fixed finally. And so that's been a barrier that hopefully we'll see more applications now that we've fixed that and got everything online with our application and links to our application. So I think that's good. The other thing, compensation. And what I handed out to you was just my recommendations again, and I just wanted to review it again, a few things. I haven't changed that first priority. I still think adding to the steps to the table will, I've talked about that before. I I had some mistakes on the other one, so I got a new one. Adding 10 steps to the salary table, I think will help put us just in the, where we're supposed to be with the table. Providing a step increase, and I know there's been some discussions about step increases. And I believe the purpose of a step increase addresses compression that we're facing right now. And I know it would be ideal if we could tie step increases to performance or something like that, but we're not set up for that. We have not done performance evaluations in years. We haven't been expecting it from people this year. And so I think tying a step increase to performance now, we don't have a way to measure that or set that up. And also, just, and you can disagree with me, and that's okay. My experience in tying salaries with performance, where we can have, if we had like salespeople, or people that were generating revenue, or people with jobs that were easily, where the output is easy to measure numerically, that makes it easy. But as a county, our work is messy. And measuring like the work that I do with numerical outputs is tough, and it would take a lot of work and thought, and we're just not there. And so tying performance to steps, as much as I love the idea and concept, we're not ready for that, to say the least, and we're not well set up for that.
So we go COLA.
So,
I don't even know how you do that as this immediately pops to my head. One of the problems that I hear most in a few of my offices is answering the phone. And that's a customer service basis, right? How quickly do you answer the phone? How would we track how much quicker employee A answers the phone in the same office versus employee B? There's no way to track that.
it's tough.
And that's really, in some of my bigger offices, and really it's courts really is the problem. How quickly they answer the phone, how do we track it? And then track their customer service.
Well, there's a way to do this. It's just not easy. It takes some training. You're familiar with it. It's an NCOER or an OER. They're quantifiable and quantitative, both. And so what you're talking about is a quantifiable and qualitative or quantitative assessment.
Yes.
So when we're talking about that, you have to be very, very specific. Commissioner Tubby did good. He gets a step increase. Commissioner Huff, you didn't do good. You don't get a step increase. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Right.
Those bullet points, how we do that, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of effort going into that. You can do it, and I don't mind going down that path if that's something that we want to go down, but there's going to be a cost increase, and then there's going to be some reasons of when we're doing all these, and the first year you don't do that step increase because we don't have it in our budget, but we did all those evaluations. People are going to be a little irritated when there isn't a salary that's tied to those. I mean, it's a fairly.
I've been in systems where we did the performance evaluations with the purpose. It's how you set the stage.
Oh, it is.
Right? Because if you tell them up front, this is not tied to compensation, or it is, you set the expectation up front. So, but I am concerned that
But
if
it comes down to if we can't afford a step, and we
Why
don't get it.
Why did we do that?
Why did we do
Why
it?
did we put the effort
Yeah.
into it? And
Well-
and in the military, what I was talking about, those are based upon. That's what our promotions are based upon.
And to
That's
me,
our steps. That's our
the very beginning that Bannock County needs to do these evaluations is we gotta have our jobs classifications printed out there. And then you evaluate as a supervisor, with each employee,
yes,
do you know your job? And what is expected of you? And then once you've done that and you've trained them, you can keep reviewing that, and if they're not meeting the expectations that are in their job classification, that's the evaluation. To me, it's not how many phone calls you get.
right.
It's, are you doing your job? And if you're the frontline person, what's your personality with the public? I mean, so,
I agree 100% that we can do the performance evaluations. I want to move us there for sure. But going back to the conversation of the step, one of the problems we're facing right now is compression, where people who have worked for 5-10 years are getting paid the same as someone that's worked
That's why you have
entry
to.
level. And so to address that, it has nothing to do with performance, but it has to do with longevity. I think if we don't address
so we're
it,
a
then-
union-based payment or salary. In a union, it doesn't matter if you had 1 year or you had 5 years, y'all get the same pay.
Yeah.
Well, and but that's part of the discussion is every time we just keep doing a COLA increase, the salary compression keeps getting.
Worse.
And if we care about salary compression or we don't care about salary compression, but the problem is like with your sheriff's deputies, you have a sheriff deputy that's been there for 10 years that is highly trained and understand what's going on, and he's either getting paid the same or less in some situations than the brand new hires, because that's what we're trying to do with no experience in what's there. What keeps those people then from just quitting and going and applying somewhere else or reapplying for their own job to make more money? And that's what we're saying. That's what you don't want to, that's what we're trying to avoid. And that's why that step increase has to occur, is because then it keeps that salary wave from that person hitting that. Even though we do a COLA, the problem is we still run into the guys that are on the ground. That's not going to change that's not going to bump them if there's that much compression in there. That's why that sucks.
But if you, and maybe I don't understand the process completely, but if you do a step increase and the new guy is making the same amount as the guy that's been here 5 years or longer, if you do a step increase across the board, then you don't fix the
But the guy that's getting hired doesn't get the step increase. He starts at step 0. The guy that's been here moves to step 1, or he's
So we
on 1.
differentiate that way.
Yeah, so brand new hires will be hired. Well, we don't have step 0, we have step 1, right?
We have step 0.
Step 0? Okay, I can't remember. So they're hired at step 0. Everyone else that's been here for 5 years has moved to step 1. That just removes your compression.
Yeah.
And
You know.
traditionally, steps have been based on year of service when they've been giving. So if you start October 2nd, you do not get a step because you haven't had a year as of October 1. So when they've been given, it's been based on 1 full year of service.
Or if you're here on October 1, yeah, or we could do something like that.
I just said that's how they've been traditionally.
Traditionally, okay. And part of this too, the concern about looking like a union or making it automatic is, again, the supervisor expectation would be if your employee's not performing, you're
Go back to
addressing
evaluations.
it. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
You're addressing it, and if there's a pattern of poor performance or policy violations, then you're going to terminate them.
Well,
You know.
to me, this year looks like it would be the year to do
Or fix it.
the COLA and the step increase with the intent to put in place this next year, the performance evaluations, and go from there. Because I, for one, hate the union, everybody gets the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I hate the automatic, just because you've been here 50 years, get, 10 million steps.
They're both the same.
Right, and so your worst performer gets the same as your best performer. I hate that, because I would like to see our customer service level and our professionalism increase, and I think the way to do that is through these performance evaluations, which will take time to put in place and to train and to get people there, because it is a challenging process.
At one point, we had talked about, in one of our many discussions on this topic, talked about stretching that out so that it was maybe a 2-year and then a 5-year and a 10-year, those are more guaranteed type steps to help with longevity. And I don't know if this is a whale of a problem to bite off in a bite.
And the bigger problem too with our salary compression is when we, in the past, we've taken on a lot of layered positions, operator 1, 2, or 3. A lot of those things, there's a reason why a lot of organizations have rank structure or have something in it, because that's how you stop salary compression. A sheriff's deputy is a deputy out there until they have certain things, but they don't have like a patrolman first class or a jailer first class or a a specialist, or there's no automatic incentive, and that's where a lot of those positions, we need to look at how they're classified, because I think some of them, just by stretching the hierarchy, you will actually probably fix some of those and take away your salary compression issues. Because if they're all, then there's a reason why the brand new guy gets hired as the private, and the guy that's been there for 4 or 5 years is maybe the first class or the corporal or whatever, operator 1 versus operator 3, or,
Right.
Well, and we just signed a bunch of salary rate approval forms. We've created more problem, in my opinion. Because now we gotta go and look at every one of them, and if one group over here is gonna get 5%, and those guys are now gonna get, like the landfill I was talking about, a 1%, because they already got theirs. To me, we've already started doing this and causing
ugly.
some severe problems.
And so, okay, and we've only got 5 minutes left, so that's an issue, and I'm glad we're talking about it, but that's kind of why I proposed what I proposed on that first priority. Okay. The second priority is I found ICRIM does have a template for an at-will employee personnel policy, which I'm going to be using that for 80-90% of what I want to propose for October 1, with a couple things that are unique to us that I like. So I'll be giving you that. The next one is third priority. These are two groups where we've already talked about. It's those folks in the sheriff's deputies and those treatment counselors in D6, where it's just an ongoing battle both for recruitment and retention, where I had said, this is a special situation. I know we have 400 employees dealing with this difficulty with the interest rates going up and cost of living going up, but these two positions above all are, and we've addressed, with some Band-Aids on some of these already, but these two are a big challenge. Though is when you're talking about like the sheriff's deputies, there's 40 of them about, and we're talking about the treatment counselors and the D6 group, that's 8, 9, 10 people. So that's a good percentage of our workforce that's getting something special, and that means it's going to cost something. But I did want to highlight them as special. And whether we do upgrades, COLAs, steps, differentials, there is something that we need to do to address them special. So that's kind of where my thoughts are on that group.
They're not as special to me, put it that way.
That's fine. That's fine. I guess they. Okay, on the page with fourth priority, these are positions I've identified that are just, all of them save one are not on the salary table now. And we've talked about the fair ones in prior meetings, and I know that's to be determined, and some of these are also maybe because they're at the maximum step and
Over market.
over market, and so that these may be fixed by adding the additional steps to the table. But I just wanted to point these out, that these are kind of outliers, and as far as they're not on the table right now, and I would like to see something, whether if they're over market, put them at step 11 or something to do with them. And based on the way I've looked at them compared to other positions, I recommended some grades for them. The one unique one was the administrative specialist in archiving. She's at a grade 4, which just seems wildly low. And so I think I've talked to Carrie Povey about that one, but that was one that just stood out as just, why on earth is she that low?
Yeah, she does the same job essentially as her counterpart, who is an 8, and they do the same job.
Yeah. So that one was just stood out.
Those are ones that we need to look at
Yeah.
individually.
Okay.
And some of them we just need to give to the Fair Board.
Okay, and then this fifth priority is, again, with people you've had in here talking to you. You know, this is our folks over at our equipment operators at the road and bridge and landfill, and then our attorneys, where I don't see the emergency quite as high as some of the others, at least I didn't. But something with COLAs, steps, differentials, let's get crews. I see this as another group that needs to be addressed. But when you look at them, there's a lot of them, again. I mean, you were talking about, 50 employees plus, so maybe the COLA is all we can do this year.
And my differentiation of operators is a little bit different. While Road and Bridge has operators and Landfill has operators, Landfill is the one that, those are the ones we have to have turning garbage no matter what.
Yeah.
Road and Bridge, if we don't pave an extra mile of road because we don't have enough staff because we can't compete with it, then that's what we don't do that this year. And that's the problem that I have is the road side of the house, there's a lot of things that we do because that's our maintenance cycle and it's the justification of the omnibus. We continue doing it. You got it. And we want to stay on that cycle. But at the same time, though, we have some key critical things that we're tasked with by the state.
Yep.
While roads and bridges are one of those, public health and the landfill is a lot different story than everything else.
That guy driving the truck from the event center, the CDL, is just as important as anybody else. I mean, it's a requirement to have the CDL.
Oh, it is. But what I'm
So,
saying,
I know.
is having the landfill open is something that we are required by state law.
True.
We are not required.
We can make adjustments to that, as we discussed the other
Yes.
day.
Yeah.
And, if the private sector has to change their hours to fill stuff, maybe that's what we've got to do too, and that's the way it is.
But what I'm saying is they can be treated where in like Road and Bridge and some of these other operators, wellness operators, stuff like that, if the grass doesn't get mowed up there and we can't play soccer while it's a public relations issue, it's not something that is derived under state law that we have to do. That's what I'm saying, is those are the ones that, when I start looking at things, I also start looking at where does the authority and justification, are these mandates, or are these things that we choose to do because we like to, or because we want to? And that's just what I mean, is there's some things like that the jail, the landfill, there's just certain things that we don't get a say.
There's 4 counties below us that all went together
Uh-huh.
to put a landfill in. So it's not that we're set on a simple option.
Right.
There's other options out there.
No, but the
that
whole
can
thing is we have
communication.
we have to provide right now, because the taxing levy that we have and what we have in place for the landfill, because cities are not allowed to have landfills. They cannot operate landfills. We can force them to go somewhere else. But the whole thing is we must provide, if we're going to have that, we have to provide either another option, or we have to have it in place.
Yeah. So anyway, I know this is kind of high level, but this is from my perspective, from my seat, as I help with recruitment and talk to folks, this department has this, and I'm kind of like Brian, where I provide advice and you guys take it or leave it, and it's kind of where my advice is at this point in time.
Cool.
So.
All right, anything else?
Nope.
That being said, we'll be at recess till 2:30.
2:30.